Imagine a product that requires no factory, no raw materials, and no inventory. A product so powerful it can fund an empire and enslave a nation at the same time. It's sold to you as freedom, but its true purpose is to keep you in a cage. This is the story of the most profitable product in human history. This is the story of debt. Welcome to Wealixon, where every story reveals how money, power, and history shape the world we live in. Here, we uncover the patterns behind inflation, crashes, empires, and the lessons they left behind. Let me tell you a story about a silent weapon. A weapon so subtle, you welcome it into your home. So powerful, it can dictate the fate of nations. This weapon is debt. And its story begins not on Wall Street, but in the dust of ancient Mesopotamia. Picture a sun-baked clay tablet etched with cuneiform script. It's not a poem or a law. It's an IOU. A farmer has borrowed grain to feed his family until the next harvest. The interest is steep. If the harvest fails, he cannot repay. He must sell his land. Then he must sell himself and his family into servitude. This was the original debt trap. But the ancient rulers understood something modern elites have forgotten. A society drowning in debt is a society on the brink of collapse, and so they performed a radical act. They declared a clean slate, a debt jubilee. All tablets were smashed, all debts forgiven, and all bonded servants freed. It was a reset button for society, a recognition that debt, left unchecked, was a social poison. This wisdom echoes in the Hebrew Bible, commanding a jubilee every 50 years. The principle was clear. Debt was a temporary tool, not a permanent chain. But somewhere along the way, this wisdom was lost. And in its place, a new, terrifying idea was born. That debt could be not just a tool, but the very engine of power and profit. Let's travel forward to the cobblestone streets of Renaissance Florence. The air smells of ink, wool, and ambition. In a palazzo overlooking the Arno River, a man named Cosimo de' Medici leans over a ledger. He is not a king, not a warrior. He is a banker. And he has discovered a secret more powerful than any army. Kings and popes need money to fight their wars and build their cathedrals. The Medici have it. They lend it. But they don't just charge interest. They weave a web of obligation. A loan to the King of Naples comes with a condition. All royal wool contracts must go through Medici-associated merchants. A line of credit for the Pope means Medici agents get to manage church finances across Europe. Debt is no longer a simple financial transaction. It is a lever. Pull it, and you can move kings. This was the moment debt evolved from a chain for the poor into a leash for the powerful. The next great leap in this story happens in the damp, ambitious climate of 17th century Holland. The Dutch Republic, a small nation, is fighting for its life against the mighty Spanish Empire. They need an endless supply of money, and they invent it. They create a revolutionary idea, the sovereign bond. They ask not just bankers, but butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers, the common citizens, to lend money to the state. In return, the state promises to pay regular interest, funded by taxes. It's a breathtaking act of financial alchemy. The Dutch are not just borrowing money. They are selling pieces of their future, and it works. Their war chest becomes bottomless. They defeat the Spanish and build a global empire, all on borrowed money. England sees this and panics. Then it imitates. In 1694, a group of financiers lends £1.2 million to King William III to fund his war with France. In return, he grants them a charter to form the Bank of England. This is the birth of the modern system. The government debt is now institutionalized, permanent, and managed by a central bank. The state and finance become Siamese twins, joined at the wallet. Think about the sheer, brutal genius of this system. The wealthy financiers who lent the money earn safe, guaranteed interest. To pay that interest, the government taxes the common man on his salt, his beer, his windows. The money flows from the pockets of the many to the vaults of the few, with the government acting as the middleman. It is a perfectly engineered wealth transfer machine, disguised as national finance. This machine fueled the British Empire. Every war, every cannon, every ship of the line was paid for by borrowing against the future. The bond market in London became the sun around which the global economy revolved. Debt was no longer just a source of power. It was the foundation of empire. But to become the most profitable product in history, debt had to do one more thing. It had to escape the boardrooms of London and find its way into your home. The 20th century was the great marketing campaign for debt. The target, you. After the Second World War, a new narrative was sold to the masses. The American dream, and at the heart of this dream was a simple, powerful product, the 30-year mortgage. For the first time in history, ordinary people were encouraged to take on a lifetime of debt to own a home. It was sold as liberation, but the fine print was a chain. The average house would ultimately cost 2 or 3 times its sticker price. The bank would own your labor for decades. Then came the credit card. Live now, pay later. It was a psychological revolution. Debt was stripped of its stigma and rebranded as sophistication, as freedom. The message was clear. You don't need to save for what you want. You deserve it now. Just sign here. And finally, the masterstroke, student loans. The promise of education was weaponized. A 18-year-old with no assets and no credit history is encouraged to take on a debt that cannot be discharged, even in bankruptcy. It is sold as an investment in your future, but for the lenders, it is the perfect product, a guaranteed, lifelong revenue stream backed by the full force of the state. The system was now complete. Governments are addicted to debt to fund their promises without raising taxes. Corporations are addicted to debt to finance buybacks and expansions. And you, the individual, are addicted to debt to maintain a standard of living that your wages alone cannot support. The entire global economy is now a machine that runs on one fuel, promises to pay tomorrow. But what happens when tomorrow arrives? The year is 1982. The Mexican finance minister calls the U.S. Treasury. He has 2 words. We cannot. Mexico cannot pay its foreign debt. The shockwave ripples across the developing world. Dozens of other nations are in the same position. They had borrowed heavily during the good times, encouraged by Western banks flush with cash. The solution was not forgiveness. It was more debt, with strings attached. The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank stepped in as the global loan sharks. They offered bailout loans, but with structural adjustment programs. To get the money, countries were forced to cut social spending, privatize national industries, and open their markets. It was a financial coup d'etat. Debt was no longer just a financial tool. It was a weapon of neo-colonial control, allowing creditors to dictate the economic policies of sovereign nations from thousands of miles away. The same pattern played out on a personal level in 2008. The subprime mortgage crisis was the sound of the debt trap snapping shut on millions of Americans. People who had been sold the dream of homeownership with predatory loans found themselves underwater. The banks that created these toxic debts were deemed too big to fail. They were bailed out with trillions of taxpayer dollars. The debtors lost their homes. The creditors kept their profits. The lesson was seared into the public consciousness. The system is not designed for you to win. It is designed for the sellers of debt to never lose. And in the aftermath, the system didn't shrink, it expanded. Central banks slashed interest rates to zero and began quantitative easing, a sterile term for creating trillions of dollars out of thin air to buy up the bad debt and encourage more borrowing. They solved a crisis caused by too much debt by creating even more debt. The addiction was being fed with a fire hose. Today, we live in the shadow of the greatest debt mountain in human history. Over $300 trillion. That's $40,000 for every man, woman, and child on the planet. This isn't prosperity. It's a claim on future labor so vast it is almost unimaginable. And the next evolution is already here. Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. Promoted as a convenient digital cash, they represent the ultimate refinement of the debt product. Imagine money that is programmable. Your loan could be approved or denied by an algorithm in an instant. Your spending could be restricted to certain retailers. Your interest rate could change in real time based on your social credit score. It is the final merger of debt and control, where every transaction is monitored, and every financial choice can be incentivized or punished with code-level precision. The story of debt is the story of a product that was perfected over millennia. It is a product that creates profit from promise, power from obligation, and control from hope. It is the invisible cage around modern life. To achieve true financial freedom, you must first understand the cage. You must see that every loan offer, every credit card, every buy now, pay later scheme is not a gateway to freedom, but a link in a chain that has been forged over centuries. The first step to breaking free is to see the chain for what it is. This is the purpose of Wealixon. We don't just recount history. We decode the systems of power that govern your life. We show you the blueprints of the cage so you can find the key. If you are ready to see beyond the illusions, if you want to understand the real forces that shape your wealth and your future, then you need to join us. Subscribe to Wealixon. Because in a world designed to keep you in debt, the most valuable asset is the truth. We give you the context, the patterns, and the historical lessons you need to navigate the greatest transfer of wealth in human history. Don't just be a customer of the system, become a student of its secrets. Subscribe now.